Hello, this is Ryanne Davis, and this is my third submission for the Associate Trainer program, where I am continuing my discussion of my training with Ariel, who is a 17-year-old Arabian mare that I've been working with in the Art2Ride method for about 18 months at this point. And so today I'm going to show you guys, I'm just going to go straight to the ride. I did lunge before this, but I didn't want the video to be too long. And the lunging looks pretty much like the ride does anyways, really. I lunged her for 10 or 12 minutes before this, but I didn't want to do, a 45-minute video because this ride is about half an hour long. Which is about the longest I'd probably ride a horse after lunging, just so that she doesn't get too tired by the end. I find that half an hour is about the maximum I can ride and accomplish anything good. I don't ride every day for half an hour, maybe 20 minutes on average. Some days a little bit more, some days a little bit less, all depending on how she's doing. So anyways, I want to talk about this ride here today because today I decided, kind of on a whim, to begin developing the working frame with Ariel. So I'm going to show you how I do that, and I'm actually going to start developing the working frame in the trot with this horse because she tends to get over her back a bit better in the trot than she does in the walk. And so you can see already she's kind of starting to lift up at the pole all by herself. And that's often when I play back these videos and watch the ride and evaluate how things are going. I look for that. I look for if the horse is beginning to kind of develop her own working frame without me even thinking about it or suggesting it in any way. And with most horses, I do begin the working frame in the walk, but like I said with her, if you've seen my previous videos, she just does better at the trot, and she tends to learn things a little bit better at the trot. So we just kind of warm up here in the walk, get ourselves established, do a little bit of a shoulder four here. So you can see she's nice and relaxed and getting established in the reins and really trying to reach all the way into that contact with me. So we do a leg yield here. And you can see she has a really nice, even, steady, slow pace. And she's not quite working in complete optimal full at the moment, but warming up takes time. So, you can see right there, she's starting to develop her own working frame. I didn't ask for that. And again, that's usually how I can tell a horse is ready to begin this process. And it's been 18 months, and this is the very first day that I'm even trying this with her, and it's sort of, I didn't plan on beginning the working frame today. I just sort of thought of it as I was going along, which is often how training goes. If you start planning these agendas of, oh, we're going to work on this, and that today, it's usually, it doesn't go that way, and you end up having to work on something totally else, or just not work on anything at all, and just go back to relaxation. So I just kind of don't have an agenda. I just sort of see what happens each day. So one thing that I do want to say is that I am experimenting with stirrup length. So my stirrups today are a little bit long, and so I'm not really able to support myself as well, and so I look a little bit like a frog up there as I'm posting. You can see I'm not quite balanced. So you'll have to forgive me today. I was just trying this out because I actually think one of my legs might be longer than the other, and so one leg feels great in a longer stirrup, while the stirrup is always slipping, but if I shorten only that stirrup, I feel lopsided in my seat, and so I'm trying to figure out what to do. So anyways, you'll have to forgive me today. I was trying out stirrups much too long, and then I didn't adjust them because I just got started riding and I wasn't even thinking about my stirrups anymore, and then I just sort of get lost in my ride and just meditate. And so anyways, before anybody comments on that, I am aware that my stirrups are much too long for today, so that's that. But anyhow, The horse doesn't seem to care too much about that because she's still stretching really nicely here and relaxing. She's establishing her rhythm, and I'm doing the best I can to ride here today in these too long of stirrups. So here we are together. And so before we begin the working frame, I'm always going to stretch the horse out nice and deep, establish a rhythm, establish herself over her back with those diagonal pairs swinging nicely together and evenly and rhythmically. And I want for her to be relaxed. I want to make sure that she's really reaching all the way down into the contact and really meeting my hands down at the bottom, so to speak, just like that. And I'm not going to start even thinking about the working frame until the horse really will meet me all the way at the end of the rein. If she's not quite stretching all the way, then to me my focus should instead be on stretching her all the way instead of starting to come up into any kind of working frame, because we do have to stretch the horse all the way down in order to start coming up. And so you'll see as we're continuing on today, she'll kind of start again raising her pole by herself without me prompting her. And you'll see when I prompt her because it's very obvious. I lift my hands and I'll let you know when I begin that process. But you'll start to see that she's actually going to begin the process all on her own. So for me, when I'm teaching a horse to raise the pole up into working frame, I'm really concentrating on the fact that I still want the horse to continue stretching. I actually consider the working frame still a stretch. I still want the horse to always be reaching down and out towards the bit. Even though the pole is rising and bringing the head up, I still want sort of the motivation to be forward and down. I never want for the neck to shorten. I never want for the head to just sort of pop up. It's a very fluid motion, or it should be. And you'll see here today that it is. So right here, this is getting really good. She's seeking the bit, finding the contact, finding the comfort, finding where that light weight of the rein contact is with me. So this is really what I like to see before beginning working frame. And you can see right there that she's adjusting a little bit, and I have to adjust a little bit. We're always adjusting. It's not like we can just fix our hands and the horse can't just fix their mouth. We don't want that. We want a nice, loose, fluid, line of communication that's always open and always adjusting to one another. Anyways, in developing the working frame, I want for the horse to always be stretching and reaching forward and downward, even though the pole is going in the opposite direction. What I don't want to see is for her neck to shorten. That's never something that I like to see in a working frame. To me, that's wrong, and it tells me that I need to ask the horse to stretch back out and down immediately. Because the neck actually, even with the pole all the way up, the neck shouldn't shorten. It should still remain just as long as it is right now when it's long and low, but only the head and pole is higher up, but the neck is just as long and reaching, if that can make sense. So I think here in a moment, you can see here that she's established a really nice rhythm. She's got a bounce going, a little bit of swing in her step, and see right there, all by herself, she's kind of coming up into her own working frame. I didn't ask for that. And so then that's what gave me the idea, maybe we can start, doing this a little bit more deliberately. So I'm going to get started here today. And what I do when I begin the working frame process, just begin teaching the horse the concept on purpose, is that I will continue posting. I'm not going to sit the trot, even though this horse I can sit her trot, as I did in my previous, my second submission. But I'm just going to continue posting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my hands up in front of me. I'm not going to shorten the rein. And you can see right there she's raising her pole by herself. I haven't asked her, and she's kind of getting comfortable in there. There's a little bit of a discomfort you can see for a moment there. She's trying to figure it out. And I have to allow for that. Again, I have to reestablish reestablish the reins and, adjust my hands so that she can adjust her body, because she's not going to just go there and stay there. She's trying to find it right now. She's exploring what the working frame means for her, what it means to stay connected to the bit and still bring her pole and head up. The horse has to teach themselves about that, and so I let her explore that. That's perfectly reasonable. Every horse I brought into a working frame has done this, where they're sort of trying to figure it out, and that's all fine and good. So there's a really deep stretch right there. That's the kind of stretch I like to see before I begin asking for a working frame. And so then you'll see right there, I lift my hands, and you can see she sort of starts to follow me, just right like that. And the rhythm stays the same, and I'm not going to bring her all the way up. I just ask her, little inches at a time. I don't expect for her pole to be all the way up as high as it can go, on the first day. She has to learn how to continue her rhythm and to use the correct muscles to raise the pole and therefore bring the head up while keeping the neck long. Her abdominals really have to contract in order to do this correctly, which is why it requires quite a bit of fitness, which is developed over time by working long and low all this time. So you can see there she's exploring, and we kind of got it a little bit wrong right there. That wasn't correct. Her head came up too soon, which probably had something to do with me. So we just go back to the stretch, reestablish that, no big deal. It's going to be messy and wrong sometimes at first. That happens, but the beautiful thing is that we can go right back into a deep stretch, and it's like a oops reset button, and that's how training should be. It should be rather easy, even when you're trying something new and the horse is exploring what that means. If one or both of us makes a mistake, we can just go back to the stretch and reestablish a rhythm, reestablish our relaxation, and then just forget about it or try it again or whatever. You just kind of go with the flow. At least I've learned that training is just going with the flow and seeing how the horse is kind of doing every day. So that was it for trying the working frame on that side. I only attempted a few lifts, so to speak, and then I reward her by coming back to a walk and keeping that stretch going and keeping that relaxation going. So you can see I never pulled backwards. I think it's tempting as riders when we first begin developing working frames with our horses to want to shorten the rein and bring the reins back towards us and sort of pick the head up, when actually that's not at all what we want to do. Really, we're sort of kind of guiding the pole up. We're asking the pole to raise. And if the head starts to feel heavy, like you're picking it up, it's not correct. Something is wrong, and you'll feel the back drop out from under you as well. And it shouldn't feel like, at least when I do it, I don't feel like I'm picking the head up. I feel like I'm just sort of moving my hands up and the head is just following me. The contact to me feels exactly the same as when the horse is stretched all the way down and out. It doesn't feel any different, doesn't feel any lighter, doesn't feel any heavier. It's exactly the weight of the rein as it is when the horse is stretched all the way down. So the actual weight on the reins shouldn't change, and if it does, that's telling me something. It's telling me I either went too fast, or the horse simply isn't strong enough to begin this process, or the horse is questioning something, any number of things. Usually if the reins suddenly get really light and it's like the horse isn't there anymore into your hands, that tends to mean the head is raised too far too soon, and they're no longer connected with you anymore. And if the rein gets really heavy, the horse is probably asking to stretch more deeply. It's just not yet strong enough to lift in the pole, because it should be rather easy and effortless. The horse shouldn't have to think about it or be given a command to raise the pole. The horse should want to follow the rider's hands up when asked, because it can. It's physically fit enough to do so. So it should be rather seamless and effortless. So if the horse feels heavy, then I tend to go ahead and lower my hands and give in to them wanting to stretch fully. They're trying to reach for that light weight of the rein feeling again. Because remember, when we're teaching our horses to stretch all the way down, we do often use a little bit of extra pressure to signify to the horse to reach into that, and that will get a little bit lighter when they do so, to the point where it's just the weight of the rein and it's comfortable. And so that comes in handy when you're teaching the working frame, because the horse then knows to stretch into contact and not evade it or fight their way out of it or anything. They drive into contact. They're motivated towards that contact. And so when learning the working frame, which again I consider still a stretch, even though the pole is coming up, the neck is then still reaching forward and down. And so I want the horse to always be motivated towards stretching and never to be shortening the neck, because the back will get lost, the hind end will drop out as well if anything shortens or disconnects over the top line. So that's why this is all so very delicate and small and sort of slight at first. So I just bring my hands right directly out in front of me and bend my elbows, and I just lift my hands up. I'm never going to bring, or I could just straighten my arms and not bend my elbows, but I think here today that I do bend my elbows because it's easier with trotting or with posting, I mean. But in the walk, sometimes I do keep my arms straight out in front of me, and I look like a zombie or something. And that's just because I never want to pull backwards. I just want to lift upwards. And if I lift upwards, then the horse lifts upwards. But if I pull backwards, then the horse is going to disconnect by either ducking behind the vertical or raising the head suddenly and dropping the back. So I just want to go directly up on the corners of the mouth, and just very, very slowly just inch my way up in order to come up into working frame. And you'll see here today that her working frame is not very high up off the ground, but that's always how it begins, is that, they're nice and deep and stretched like this, and then the working frame just sort of inches its way up little by little over time. So it is really exciting when you can finally begin this process after a year and a half of stretching her out like this. And this is really a horse that loves the stretch. I mean, she just dives right on down there and finds that contact with me. She's really easy to keep contact with, which has been cool. Some horses can be more difficult to develop genuine contact with. They either evade it by ducking behind the vertical or lifting their heads way up, or they yank on the reins or what have you. But this horse has been fairly easy to teach about contact. She had developed a habit of going behind the vertical, as that is what she was taught growing up. But that's been fairly simple to correct with her, since she quickly realized it feels way better to poke her nose out in front of the vertical, which again makes it much easier to develop a correct working frame into good contact, because she doesn't want to go behind the vertical, and so she will want to continue taking the bit forward. And so if she does duck, I know something is wrong and we need to stretch back out. So you can see again there she's kind of exploring it by herself, and that's fine, I allow for that. And you can see there we kind of lost contact, so I reestablished with her again, ask her back down. So we really want to have a very solid rapport with the stretch with our horse before we begin working on developing a working frame. Because too, yes, we're coming up into working frame, but we're always going to return to a deep stretch after maintaining the working frame to let the blood flow back through the muscles and keep the top line loose. So we want to make sure our horse can communicate with us about what level of stretch their body needs at any moment. And I always, too, try to make sure to stretch the horse back out before the horse becomes tired. It's often tempting, especially when we're first beginning to develop the working frame, to get really excited, and we might kind of hold it there for much too long, and the horse is like begging to stretch back down, and then they start dying out in the hind end, the back starts dropping out. So I want to make sure to anticipate that they're going to get tired and try to stretch back out well before that happens, so that we're not trying to sort of catch up afterwards and trying to reestablish the hind end back into the stretch. I want the horse to learn that she's not supposed to die out to get out of being held up, so to speak. That the working frame is supposed to, in fact, encourage her to get further over her back and really engage deeper. And so I want the horse to just think of the working frame as sort of an extension of the stretch, still reaching deeply and forward at all times. So here again, we begin at the trot. Again, excuse my really long stirrups today, but again, we start off in the stretch, nice and deep, establish that contact, establish a rhythm, establish a little bit of swing, a little bit of bounce, a little bit of thrust, and then we go from there. And again, you can see all by herself. My hands didn't lift at all. She explores the working frame once again, all on her own. And sometimes we can use side reins on the lunge to start teaching our horses about coming up into working frame. I did not do that with this horse because I don't myself particularly like that the side reins are fixed, and I like for my horse to learn that the reins are always flexible and my hands are always going to be available for adjustment, and it's not like she's just going to be put into a working frame and get sort of stuck there. So I didn't personally use side reins with her since she's so great with contact. I don't ever want to risk losing excuse me, her fluidity and trust of the rein. And so in that way, she's really teaching herself about this. I'm just there to kind of ask her to do so a little bit more deliberately. And you know, she either follows me or she doesn't. It's never a command or a cue. Excuse me. It's simply an expression of her level of fitness. Depending on the strength of her hind end, her abdominals, her top line, she can follow me up when I lift my hands, or she can't, you know, and if she doesn't follow me up and just remains stretching in full, you know, that's fine. I would just lower my hands again and forget about it. She's just simply not ready to come up into any sort of working frame, that's all. So you can see here she's a little bit flat, but I think that has a lot to do with carrying more of my weight than she's used to because my stirrups aren't really able to support me, so I'm distributed a little more heavily in the saddle than I otherwise would be with more supportive of stirrups, but she's able to develop a little bit of thrust as she continues along here, so that's not her fault, that's my fault. But considering that I have minimal support up there, she's doing quite well, so I'm really pleased with this ride. She really puts up with a lot with me. A lot of it is just experimentation, you know. We as riders, we have to learn to work over our backs just as much as our horses do. So we have to figure out how to sit in the saddle in the best way for ourselves and support ourselves in the best way and stay tall and balanced and develop our own self-carriage muscles. So I work other horses besides this horse, but this one right here is kind of my main squeeze. So she's really been sort of more of a guinea pig of sorts. And she's really put up with a lot of my little experiments, so I really love this horse. She is just completely incredible. So here I'm going to lift my hands up in front of me, as you'll see. Maybe, am I doing it? Yeah. So there, I lift my hands, and you see right there, she doesn't follow me. She stays completely stretched out, and that's fine. I just leave my hands right there. I don't shorten the rein. I don't force her to do it. I just leave my hands right there and see if she'll follow me. And if she doesn't, she doesn't. But that's why I don't want to shorten the rein. Because I want to be able to maintain that deep stretch. I want to maintain that focus on the stretch so that the horse is still stretching at all times. And then right there, you can see she begins to follow me a little bit. So I just keep my hands right there, never pulling on the rein, and then I just guide her back down into a full stretch. And so you can see we sort of follow each other, and we go at a very, very incremental, slow, fluid pace. I never want to just jerk up on the rein or suddenly have all this pressure on the rein, because I have to remember the pull is not going to raise very high in the beginning. So there I just lift my hands, and there she tries to follow me a little bit. She still wants to stay stretched out, which again, I want the motivation to always be forward and down. So I just keep my hands right there, don't lift them any higher, and then right there she begins to follow me, and see she's trying to find where that contact is comfortable, but she's see how she's still reaching forward right there. Very good girl, that's the stuff. So so I let her back into a full stretch. I just ease her back down there, just incrementally lower my hands. So then that way I don't have to sort of fumble with my reins a whole bunch. I just lift my hands and lower my hands. I don't shorten the rein or fumble around my fingers or any of that sort of thing, because that starts to get complicated. You lose contact, and I've tried it that way, and it just doesn't work. At least for me, I lose my sort of fluidity, and I lose that sense of contact. So here I think I try again, and I think I only try maybe 3 times each way, because any more than that, and she'd just get tired and potentially overwhelmed by this new activity and lose the ease to it. So once again, I just lift my hands out in front of me, never pulling backwards, and you can see right there, she just follows me right up, see? And it's just that easy. I just I didn't shorten my rein, I didn't pull on her, I don't pick her head up for her. I just keep my hands out in front of me, and then I lower them back towards her wither, and she follows. And I got really excited about that because that was really good. So I forgot to steer, and that's why we're making this really small circle. But you can see she can still maintain the rhythm in that smaller circle, and then we just move back out into a larger circle. And so I think that's it for the working frame for today, and so you can see that the working frame did not get very high up off the ground today. But you know what, today is just maybe an inch off the ground, and then, maybe a month from now, we'll be at chest height or something. Who knows? But this is how, for me, it begins, well, except usually in the walk, but once again, this horse tends to work better over her back in the trot, so I'm going to go ahead and teach her something new in the gait that she's most comfortable with, rather than trying to sort of force her to learn it in the walk, because that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm just going to do whatever feels right to her, So that was really nice. I was extremely pleased with this ride with her. She's taken a really long time to develop, a lot of deep stretching, and so it was really thrilling today to begin guiding her pole up a little bit into a working frame that she could maintain for today. So it really demonstrates to me that she's developing nicely. And that is just incredibly rewarding when you work so hard for a year and a half on a horse, just stretching all the time. And then it's like all at once, all that preparation pays off on days like this, where the horse begins teaching herself the working frame, and then you can just kind of encourage that learning process. That's awesome. So, as exciting as it is, though, I'm not going to ask for a working frame deliberately again for a while, because I want for her to have a positive experience. I want to make sure she's always motivated to stretch deeply at all times, and I don't want her to start thinking, oh, she's going to ask my pole up today. I never want for that ever to become sort of a thing of its own like that. So this is really good for today, and that's all we're going to do in terms of the working frame for a little while. I'm just going to leave it alone and let it sort of settle into her bones, if you will. And then the next time we go for it, it'll be a little bit easier, a little more fluid, maybe even a little higher, perhaps for a little longer. But I want for her to always consider the working frame willingly, and so by not practicing it a whole lot from now on, it keeps its freshness, so to speak, when we try it again. I want it to be like a distant, fond memory, so that then, a year from now, we could probably easily glide from working frame to deep stretch just seamlessly more frequently. So you can see after all that work, she's got a really nice walk. She's really powering through. You can see those hind legs really sweeping forward and pushing us forward, which is exactly what we're looking for when a horse works over her back. We're looking for that hind end to power the horse onwards. So this is a beautiful ride for Ariel, a 17-year-old Arabian that was ridden upside down and backwards most of her life. You can see she still has the remnants of a hunter's bump at the top of her hips, but that's been slowly disappearing. It does take a really long time for that to go away, and I don't think at this point she's actually had any chiropractic or body work, which would certainly help to continue eliminating and healing that bump. Now that her muscles know how to work correctly, if her bones get reset, the muscles would then be able to support her skeleton more efficiently. So I find it important to get a horse adjusted sometime between 18 months and 2 years of consistent quality Art2Ride work to continue unlocking and unleashing their most optimal bodies. So, anyways, beautiful ride, Ariel, good girl. So, I brought an apple, and you always want to make sure to give your horse a little something for such a good job. And, of course, give yourself a little something for such a good job, even though you may need to adjust your stirrups next time. So, anyways, that was our ride for today, and, again, this is Ryanne Davis, and this is my third submission with Ariel for the Associate Trainer program. And I really hope you enjoyed watching us develop a working frame for today. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.